moments ago, the president announcing Jay Clayton, the former SEC chair, as the nominee to be Director of National Intelligence. Let's bring in MS Now senior national security reporter David Rohde following this breaking news, and MS Now legal analyst Catherine Christian also with us. David, tell us the latest on this kind of surprise nomination.
It is a surprise nomination. Jay Clayton is a prosecutor. I believe is currently the Southern District prosecutor in New York. That's Manhattan and part of Westchester County. I don't believe he has a large amount of intelligence experience. And my key question is when he would take office, because the real concern surrounding Bill Pulte has to do with any actions he might take regarding the midterm elections. But I would say this is a step forward. He's a better nominee, sort of really speaking off the top of my head, than Bill Pulte, and that he has a lot of experience as a lawyer and a prosecutor. But the question here is the timing. I just think Bill Pulte should not be an acting director of national intelligence or serving in any form in such a powerful and important office.
I do want to get to Bill Pulte and to the potential lack of experience in intel, Catherine. But first, let me just read what President Trump put on Truth Social announcing this. I'm pleased to announce the nomination of very highly respected Jay Clayton, former chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, the former head of Sullivan and Cromwell, one of the most prominent and successful law firms anywhere in the world, and the current United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, to be the next Director of National Intelligence, and importantly, to serve in my cabinet. I'll leave the rest for the viewers to read. But Catherine, speak to who this person is. Who is Jay Clayton?
Well, the president is right. He is a very highly respected attorney. He was chair of the SEC. He was a partner at Sullivan Cromwell. I don't know, it was the best law firm in the world, but it's a highly respected law firm. And he's the current United States attorney for the Southern District of New York. But federal law requires that this position be given to someone with extensive national security experience. And it doesn't appear that Jay Clayton has that. Clearly, he is a very competent, highly qualified attorney and qualified to be the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. It's not clear about that requirement of extensive national security experience.
David, is there any sense for why now? We had Bill Pulte's name echoing in the ether. Clearly, Republicans were incensed. Some Republicans, I should say, were incensed by him as acting DNI. So why now?
This is a victory for Democrats in Congress who held up Section 702, the approval of that very important tool to the intelligence community. Some say it's too important, in a way, too powerful. But this is a law that allows the U.S. To surveil. It's a communications between foreigners and Americans. And so during these kind of sweeps, when they collect it's a lot of NSA eavesdropping, they can obtain the communications of Americans who are conversing with foreigners. And so there are complaints from both the left and the right about it should be a more thorough process to protect Americans' privacy. But what Trump has done here is back down. We have the president backing down again. You could argue earlier today he sort of backed down to Iran. He's now backing down to Democrats because Section 702 was going to expire. And there were deep fears about not having that tool would make it, more difficult for the intelligence community to see terrorist threats and many other threats to the United States.
I want to bring in David Drucker of the Dispatch. David, let's talk about the political implications of this. You have David Rohde mentioning that this is a victory for Democrats who have pressured on FISA. How will Republicans view this? Will they be breathing a sigh of relief, or are they still going to have concerns about Jay Clayton in this role?
Well, we're going to have to see how Senate Republicans react to Clayton and his qualifications or lack thereof per the statute, which was laid out very expertly there. But I think this has to be seen as the president acquiescing to the wishes of the United States Senate, which needs to confirm any new DNI. There was a bipartisan dissatisfaction with Bill Pulte, just feeling like he was not only was he not a national security expert or professional, but that he wasn't up to the job and was too partisan of an individual. And what you're getting with Clayton is a lawyer and somebody who can theoretically, sell himself and present as nonpartisan, which is something that Tulsi Gabbard didn't present when she was confirmed. And I think that the president moving so quickly to Jay Clayton after promoting Mr. Pulte and saying, look, he'll be there for a while because there are things that he wanted Pulte to do, and he talked about that, I think shows that the pressure he was under, both with the reauthorization of FISA, but just general unhappiness from Republicans as well as Democrats in the Senate. I just say, one side note here, for some Republicans, they feel that 20 plus years on, the DNI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, has outlived its usefulness, and they wouldn't mind seeing it go away. Clearly, the president wants to fill this position, and I think that he had to move away from Pulte. I think the interesting thing is that he did it so quickly and didn't send Pulte on his, fact-finding missions in the intelligence community, which he had said was very important to him just a couple of days ago.
Why do you think that is? Why so quickly? I mean, it's an outstanding question. Was it the pressure from House Speaker Mike Johnson, who met with him 2 times, allegedly, on this? It was the House Speaker who met with him. He wasn't meeting with Senator Thune. Do you see, Congress pressuring the president on this? Is that how this worked?
Well, I don't know that. I think we need to look at this more as a U.S. Senate issue, simply because they have confirmation authority here, right? And they were the ones that were unhappy, and they were the ones that were I'd call it subtly applying pressure, right? I mean, usually the way you get Trump to reverse course, if you're a Republican, is not to go after him directly, but just sort of, make it known that you're unhappy with this and you think the president's agenda would be served better if the president himself would make a different choice. And I just think there was enough unhappiness among Republicans that it wasn't just the Democratic opposition. I think we also have to, as David Rowe just mentioned here, and I think this was important, there's a deep concern that FISA is going to expire. And we don't think about this much, but the reason the FISA court was created in the aftermath of 9/11 is we just felt like we were not keeping tabs on all of these bubbling and percolating threats that could turn into terrorist acts if we don't ferret them out first. And so even though FISA has lost favor among the public to some degree, the U.S. government, under both Democrats and Republicans, has found it to be a very important national security tool.
I want to bring in MS Now White House reporter Laura Barone-Lopez. Laura, any sense for why the whiplash on this? Why did this happen now?
I think, ultimately, as both David Rowe and David Drucker said, this comes down to the fact that the president was squeezed. He obviously wanted Bill Pulte, that's someone who was a loyalist, someone that the president has trusted, who has had the ear of the president for quite some time now, even sometimes to the dismay of others in the president's circle inside the White House. They haven't always liked how much Bill Pulte has been able to talk to the president and do the president's bidding and encourage the president to go after his perceived enemies and say that he would do it on his behalf. Now, the big question here, so ultimately, Ariel, to answer your question, it came down to, I think, the fact that FISA, that warrantless surveillance law, was going to expire on Friday, as well as the fact that Pulte likely was not going to get confirmed. Now, when it comes to Jay Clayton, the big question is whether or not he is going to carry out as much of the president's bidding as Pulte would have. Now, just yesterday, the president was talking about the fact that he wanted some downsizing of the national intelligence apparatus, something that Tulsi Gabbard had already been doing, had fired a number of people across her agency, but that was something that the president wanted to see done. There's also the question of elections and voting systems and election security, which the president has repeated those false claims over and over again, saying that the American elections are rigged and not safe. That was something Pulte also spread. And Jay Clayton just recently, talking to, I believe it was CNBC, kind of repeated some of that, saying in an interview that he thought questions about election integrity were valid and that it was something worth looking at, and that there were essentially casting doubt about the security of American elections. So one big question I'm sure some senators are going to have, especially people like Lisa Murkowski and others who don't support President Trump's continuation of these conspiracy theories, is what Jay Clayton is actually going to do and whether or not he is going to try to take a hands-on approach when it comes to election systems in the way that Tulsi Gabbard was starting to, Ariel.
So, David Drucker, hearing Laura Barón Lopez's reporting there, is it your sense that this is what tipped the scales in Jay Clayton's favor, that he was willing to express some degree of skepticism in election integrity?
Well, look, we know that that's always important to President Trump, right? I mean, he wants his top officials, he wants all of his officials to parrot his conspiracy theories or his views as he sees them. His views on the 2020 election and elections that he does not win are conspiracies because when he's lost, he's lost. I think the question here is in a confirmation hearing, does Mr. Clayton talk about wanting to examine election security and do things to beef up election security within the law and in ways that do not impinge on states' rights? And in our system, states have purview over elections, not the federal government, in terms of how they are administered. Or is he going to begin talking about a desire to look back at previous elections, namely the 2020 election, and take over where Tulsi Gabbard left off, showing up in Georgia or Arizona or anywhere else, asking for ballots and wanting answers as to, this or that conspiracy? There is a difference here, right? I mean, there is a role for the federal government to play to make sure the elections are secure from foreign interference. And both the first Trump administration and the Biden administration had departments and officials that did that work. The question is, are we looking backward, trying to create proof that doesn't exist, or is he simply going to talk about doing the job that the federal government is supposed to do?